We've just wrapped up an awesome conversation with some great mission trip leaders, and you're going to learn all about the ins and outs of leading mission trips with Maranatha. You're not going to want to miss this.
Yeah, you'll also hear about what a daily schedule might look like in the day in the life of a project coordinator. And our guest, Jennifer Trujillo, what's the first thing she does every morning when she's on a project?
Let's get to it. Hey everybody, welcome to Inside Missions. I'm Christina Lloyd and I'm the Director of Media Production here at Maranatha, and I'm joined by Julie Lee, our VP of Marketing.
Hello.
Today, we're also joined by two mission trip veterans. We have Karen Godfrey, who is our VP of Advancement.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us. And then also we have Jennifer Trujillo, and she is a veteran mission trip leader. And we're going to talk a little bit about missions and what it's like to lead mission trips. Thank you for joining us, Jennifer.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Okay, well, the two of you know probably better than most that mission trips are really challenging, and it's a task that is not everybody is up to the task for that. So I'd like to talk a little bit about how we lead mission trips, your planning process, and the impact that you see in the volunteers. And I'd like to start with you, Jennifer, and learn just a little bit about you, how you got involved in mission trips, and all of that. So how did you get connected with Maranatha initially?
So I'll start at the beginning. When I was a student missionary for a year in college, so that kind of was my first introduction to missions. And then married my husband. We met at PUC, and he had done a short-term mission project while he was a student there. And then we moved to Sonora after we had our first child. And there was a couple who led a mission trip to Belize every year and took our youth students, our 7th through 10th graders. And we watched that, and we had very little ones, at the time, but just watched it, supported, loved hearing the stories. And after 10 years, they announced that they were retiring. And I remember listening to that and just feeling something in my heart. And I leaned over to my husband, and because they had said we need someone to take the torch. And I said, I think we could do that. But our children were still young, and he kind of nodded, and it just passed. And the next year went by, and there was no mission trip. And I was really sad about that. And just saw the kids that could have gone. I don't remember if it was the following year or if 2 years passed. But I just kept feeling this call in my heart, this nudging, and woke up one morning and met my husband in the kitchen, and he was already awake. And I just said, I want to lead a mission trip, and I need you to do that with me. And he just, paused and thought about it. And he said, the enemy's going to attack us if we do this. And I'm like, yeah. And I had no idea how to proceed. But we agreed, okay, let's pursue this and see where it can go. And there were a couple of families in our church who I had heard had gone on a mission trip to Dominican Republic, actually. And I was like, well, I guess I'm just going to start asking questions because I didn't know where to start. And the other couple had led their own trip, but I wanted more support. And so just started asking questions, and they had gone with Maranatha. So well, how does that work? And so then I remember just looking up Maranatha. I hadn't heard of you before, and started looking on your website, and then decided just to call. And I don't remember who I spoke with the very first time. This was 10 years ago. But I said, I would like to lead a mission trip. How does that work? And I saw your small groups on here, and Maranatha just took me by the hand and walked me through the process and said, turn in the application. And okay, so that's where it started. Wow. As far as meeting Maranatha.
So how many trips have you done since that initial trip?
We've organized 4. but fulfilled 3. Well, we fulfilled 4, but not in person for the 4th because we were supposed to go to Peru, and that was in 2020. And literally 4 days before we were supposed to take off, all our bags are packed, everything's ready, and all the borders closed down. So, yeah. So, but Dominican Republic was our first trip, and we ended up still funding the church that Maranatha workers built in Ossia. And then we went to Kenya and just returned from India.
Well, tell me about your most recent trip. You're literally just back. You've been back a week now.
Yes, 1 week.
What was that? What was the goal of that trip? What were you guys doing? Tell us a little bit about that.
So we went there to build a church for the Garo community in Guwahati. And that was the primary project. In addition, they had asked, would it be possible for us to paint a couple of classrooms? And so we said, sure. Found out kind of the size of the church and whatnot, and felt we had extra people to help because our group was fairly large, I feel, at 50. And so when we got there, though, and my husband walked through the project with the construction lead there, he decided, yes, we can do that, but we'll paint the whole school building. And it totaled, I think, in the end, 16 classrooms in all the hallways. So, yeah. And yeah, we had a VBS program that was led by our youth pastor, and a week of worship in the evening for the high school. Now,
this project happened in the northeast of India, correct?
Yes. North Garo Hills.
So what did you think of India? Because you've been to, you said Dominican Republic and
Kenya.
Yeah.
All very different places. And then India was also very different. But I'm curious because I love visiting India, and it's quite impactful the first time I went. But what did you think?
Every place is unique, and there's different gifts at each location. When we went to Kimagoro in Kenya, the students were just instantly all over you. And so they're just high-fiving you all day and wanting to jump into your arms. And India was, when we arrived on campus, it was a little more formal. And we had to kind of assess the situation. And the students kind of were shy looking at us. They were very curious and smiling, but more reserved. So we had to find a way to break through that. Soccer was one of those ways. So we found out they were big into soccer and volleyball. And so we had our students playing soccer with them. And then the little ones, of course, with Vacation Bible School and whatnot, that helped us to be able to interact. I think the overwhelming thing everywhere we go is just the friendliness and the desire to make connection.
Now, Jennifer, you talked about how you got started because you kind of saw this void where you saw an opportunity that wasn't being taken. But I sort of open up, what motivates the rest of you to lead a mission trip? It's a lot of work. It's very demanding, and it's a lot of details and all of that. But what kind of drives the desire to take on that big responsibility?
For me, it's the opportunity to stay connected with the mission, being out there and meeting the people that are involved in the mission. I approach a project feeling very, very humbled that, number one, people will spend this time and this energy to come and do something like this, and the fact that I get to be there to, try to shepherd this whole situation, it's humbling, and I feel very honored to be able to do it. I think that people come and they don't realize what's going to happen to them, and we don't even realize it as leaders. We go into it not knowing what changes we're going to see in ourselves, what changes we're going to see in others. And so it's really an interesting process all the way around.
I've only done one. So I'm the novice. You guys have all done more than me. And mine came about because it was an emergency situation where they really needed a project leader for a family project over Christmas. And they said, hey, would you be interested in going? And I had 2 months to prepare. I had a rush session with a couple of people who kind of showed me the ropes, what to expect, how to do this, and had my hand held by our awesome field staff in the Dominican Republic. But as I was planning it, I was motivated because it was fulfilling something that was needed in my work. But when I look back at planning the details, I think there's just so many transformative things that can happen on a mission trip. But it also has to do, and it happens naturally, and it happens through God's guidance. But also as a project leader, you have this immense responsibility to kind of create an experience that it's designed to help open people's eyes to the world and to God in new ways. And I take that responsibility pretty seriously in trying to figure out, how do you shape the day? How do you shape day 1 to day 10? And it's really satisfying as somebody who likes to organize events and such. But I think that if I were to do it again, I would find that to be deeply motivating too, to see how we can be part of guiding a transformational experience for people. But
Yeah.
Jennifer, you,
I think our focus is on our youth, our high school students. And so we have, starting in 7th grades, now we've embraced like younger siblings and families to go with us. But I think that for us, our primary focus being that teenage population, there is so much happening that we didn't face when we were that age, just social pressures, social media, different things like that. And so being able to take them to experience other cultures and see other places in the world and have the opportunity to serve and learn self-sacrifice and resilience and see what they're really capable of, that they will not probably have the opportunity to do here at home. There's just a lot of mental health crisis going on, I see, as a pediatrician, and being able to just open their minds to possibilities for their future, how God can use them to serve, and that all things are possible with Him. That's been our primary focus.
Do you guys, I feel like, and Christina, you've led projects, but do you feel like it's so amazing to see those aha moments that people have? Yeah.
And I think particularly for us in the office that travel a lot, you kind of see the same things over and over again. But when you're taking a group of people and exposing them to that for the first time, you're getting to see that aha through their eyes. Something that maybe it's like, oh, I've seen that a bunch of times. But then when you see the wonder in somebody else's eyes, it kind of reopens your heart to that wonder and kind of reinvigorates that, thinking about things differently, even if it's something you're like, oh, yeah, it's these people don't have a church. When this is something that is awe-inspiring for others, I think it really hits that home again. After going again and again and again, it kind of reinvigorates that. So I think that's important.
I've had kids go on mission trips with my with their high schools that I haven't been on. One of them with Maranatha, one with not. But I've noticed, a couple years apart, but working with young people, Jennifer, I know that leaders sometimes come back to me after the trip. They come to me and they go, your son made a comment during one of the worships that was just really insightful. And I could see in their eyes that they were excited that my kid had that insight as a result of their experience. And I wonder if that happens to you too, where you just kind of get really excited that these kids are having their minds opened.
Yeah, absolutely. It becomes an addiction in some ways. So we have repeat. Actually, I went back and counted, and half of the students that went on this trip had gone on the previous trip, and half were new. The other benefits that we've seen that were unexpected, there's students that may not get to go, and they watch their friends go, and for whatever personal reason, they're not able to. And it's a struggle, especially for those that really want to, but it has lit fires in those students, and some of them have gone on to college and then gone for student missions for a year. And you don't know what, came about just from watching that. The other thing that it has done in our community is drawn our church in. I think it's really done a lot of mission work in our home place, because our church is so supportive of us. We have a lot of students who need the funding to be able to go. And we do a lot of fundraising and community activities, and the church with just their prayer support and whatnot. And so we've seen that benefit. And the parents as well. I brought them along as kind of leaders and workforce, but you don't realize what impact it will have on their lives when they return and what they see as well. So we've had parents brought into the church, their faith strengthened as well through these trips.
Well, these mission trips require a lot of planning and a lot of detail. So let's talk a little bit about the nitty-gritty there. As far as organizing before you go on the trip, what are some of the critical components that you want to make sure are in place so that everything, the beginning of that project is just hitting just right and everything is running smoothly? Are there a few critical things that you're like, these have to be in place and these are things that I want to be very intentional about?
So when people first arrive, oftentimes if they're first timers, there's usually quite a bit of anxiety. And so meeting them at the airport, making sure that they, first of all, know that somebody is going to come and get them. But then when they get to the housing, wherever that is, making them feel welcome, a meal, if it's the right, the appropriate time of day. But to me, those first few hours are pretty crucial to making people relax, feel comfortable, be able to get the rest, especially if you're going really far away, whether it's South America or India or Kenya, somewhere in Africa. It's just, we at Christmas time when we went to India, it took so many hours, as Jennifer knows, to get where we were headed. And then after we got there, then it was an additional, after they landed, it was an additional 3.5-hour drive. So by the time people got there, they were completely exhausted. And so I really felt like that the first few hours were really crucial. Number one, I couldn't have an orientation that lasted 2 hours long. I mean, because people just weren't there, they were exhausted. So you just learn how to sort of read that, space things out, make sure that the food, the water, the housing, everything, that they're made to be comfortable, and then they can start to hear things. They can start to absorb, different things, especially in a place where there is so much different than their culture. So those are some of the.
Yeah, I always kind of equate it to planning a party, where you want to make sure that people are comfortable. You want to have an idea of what you're going to be doing, but it's not like this really strict run sheet where this time we have to do this. You have to kind of take that feedback from what's going on in the group. Like, how's the parties going? Is everybody getting along? Does everybody have what they need to have a good time? And so I think it's that structure, but then also getting feedback for what people need at that particular moment is important.
The getting acquainted at the beginning has got so much. Now, if you're coming from a place where you already know each other, that's one thing. But in the open teams, people don't generally have that. I mean, they may know some people from previous trips, but to me, that getting acquainted time is pretty crucial, because if you create an environment where people are talking about who they are, other people say, "Oh, I got to talk to them afterwards. I wonder if they know so-and-so, or how, I used to live there, or whatever." And it all of a sudden starts that camaraderie that will last throughout the entire project. And I love that part.
Maybe we should have Karen clarify you mentioned a term, open team versus group, but that would be helpful maybe for people to know the two types.
An open team means that volunteers will apply to go on this trip from all over. They can be from anywhere. It can be one person. It can be 5 people. It can be, whatever. The project, like what Jennifer has just recently led, is called a group project. They come from a certain area, whether it's a school, a church, a family group. We've got family groups that are signed up to come. And generally, that group will know each other. Now, there are some times when people come and join, and they don't know the people that they're with. But most of the time, they know each other when they're engaged on the project. They start.
Now, Jennifer, your group, obviously, you guys knew each other. You were doing prep together. And one of the things in talking with our field staff in India, a compliment that they paid your group was that they felt like you guys were just very flexible, very go with the flow, and had great sense of cultural sensitivity, worked really well with the people there on the ground, loved them well. What types of things are you doing with your group? What kind of communication and prep are you doing as a team before you are even embarking on the trip?
What did you do to get such glowing reviews?
Well, it's been a learning curve. I wouldn't say that I was as flexible in our first trip, but I guess one thing to talk about is, where does our group all come from? We don't necessarily all come from the same place, but we have a connection. So,
what does that mean?
Our students can come from our local Adventist school. We targeted our high school and then extended down into 8th grade. And then students may attend church, but we have some of those students who homeschool. And then the other source was our youth group, which meets with our youth pastor on Wednesday nights. And those students have either come from the school, attend the church, or they've been invited by friends. And so some of them come from our public school system. But there's a thread of connection to everyone. And then what we did this time is allow families to be included. So we had full families attend this trip, which was a first. We think our biggest family was a family of 6. Wow. So that's how our group comes together.
So the core connection is the church, kind of?
That's
the central hub.
Because the youth group comes from the church. Sure. The school's connected to the church. It's church supported, yes. As far as answering your question on preparation, so we always start with an introductory meeting, and our very first meeting, I showed your year-end review video to our team because I didn't have pictures to show, and I said, this is what we want to do. And then the trips after that we've promoted, we've started by showing slides and stories from our previous trip, and then talking about where we might go. So that gives people a vision. Once people start signing up and we have our full team, then we have a series of meetings. At our first meeting, we go over the location that's been assigned to us in the project and a packing list and what the culture is going to be like, and talk about that. And the health issues that we might be facing when we arrive. Our second meeting, we go over the details, and this is really important, I feel, is we assign everybody a leadership position that's an adult on the team. And so they may be learning for the first time that they're going to be in charge of organizing all the construction site supplies or keeping it clean or on a block leading team. So we try to prepare them mentally for what their role might be when they're there. And we review cultural things for them to expect, and kind of go over some do's and don'ts on what to say, what not to say, how they may interact with the people when we're there.
Where did you get those? How did you curate those resources for that last part?
What are you drawing from as you're teaching?
For the cultural?
What not to say, what not to do. Yeah.
Well, some from talking to leadership ahead of time. I communicate a lot with the leadership that's in the country before we even depart. So Alice and Vinish were very patient with me in responding and all the questions that I ask ahead of time. But my family has traveled quite a bit. It's just kind of one of our goals was to expose our children to the world. And I lived overseas not as a mission child, but so I've lived in another country when I was young. My husband has traveled a lot, and then Pastor Tyson and Marielle, who were our co-leaders on this trip, also have travel experience and have lived overseas. Marielle grew up in Kenya, and Pastor Tyson was actually a missionary there for a period of time. So I think, I'm not sure if that's answering your question, but a lot of it is from personal experience in the leadership, and then what we learn from trip to trip along the way and adapt. Yeah.
Now, your group was mostly young people. You had families, and I know Karen and Julie and I, we've all led family projects as well. When you're dealing with young people, how does that change how you're planning for a trip as opposed to a group of adults that you're taking somewhere? How does that influence maybe some of the decisions that you make or how you structure the trip? What difference does that make? And the age, what difference does that make?
Well, I've never led a trip that was adults. We've always been majority youth. But my husband, who I have to say, I don't think I'd be sitting here or we'd be getting the praises without him, because he takes over the construction project and just is very organized with that.
Does he work in construction in his day job? Or
he's an attorney.
Okay, so
and I'm a pediatrician. Yes. He built a house with his father in high school and built cabinets to earn his way through school when he was young. So that's his experience. Had he ever laid block before? No. And had he ever laid brick before? No. So this is all learning on the job. But remind me your question.
Like, how does having young people on a mission trip kind of change how you plan or decisions that you make or things like that?
Okay, so we start with the structure of the adults that we have and put them in roles of leadership. And then I take the youth and I organize them into 6 groups. And I start putting all the oldest, spreading them out down to then the youngest, spreading them out. So it's oldest to youngest, fairly balanced. And then we rotate those groups through the different stations. So construction, this time we also had painting and VBS. And so everybody gets 2 days of vacation Bible school and 4 days of construction if you're working for 6 days. And then my husband and I work together and lay out the teams that he will put under an adult. So let's say his block laying team, he'll have an adult that he knows can handle that, and he'll assign an older and a younger student to that block laying team. And Kenya, when we had the dormitory, which is extremely large, I think we started out with 6 block laying teams, let's say. And after the second day or partway into the second day, then the youth, the older youth are trained, and he would then put them in charge and set them out on their own as a block laying leader with younger students. And we ended up with 12 block laying teams, but half of them being led by our older youth. With the younger ones, they're phenomenal, honestly. Some of our younger students, they just will not stop working. And our youngest one on this trip was 10. And this is probably some of the youngest we've had. And so we just pair them up. And initially at the beginning, our 10 and 11-year-olds, we said, you'll work side by side with your parent. As the week went on, they were able to work side by side with an older youth student. And
they really rise to the occasion.
Yeah, no, they really do. Without them, we wouldn't get the work done. So I think if you expect more out of them, yes, exactly like you said, they rise to the occasion.
Karen, you've led projects of all shapes and sizes and ages. And when it comes to young people, how does that change things for you?
So honestly, the first 25 or so years that I was at Maranatha, it was almost always adults for me. So when I had the opportunity to do a family project, I really had to do a shift in my head of okay, what does this look like? And of course, organizationally, we had a bit of a structure already because we had been doing family projects. But as you know, families can come on any project. But when we do a family project, we are very intentional about having programming for all the ages. And the very first one, you and Tom and the kids were on, the very first one that I did, a family project, and it was to India. And I will tell you, to me, that is one of the more exciting places to do a family project because there is so much to expose the young people to culturally. And generally, to have time for the kids to work, time for the kids to do a little bit of play, maybe a little downtime, but also having a cultural experience to throw in there. I just remember thinking the first time that we did one of these to India, how rich it was for our kids, to the point that the teenagers were like, can we go? And it was
I feel like the adults always want to go.
Yeah, exactly. And we certainly tried to keep it open for anybody who wanted to come. But being able to go and harvest the garden and take it the next day to sell it at the market. I mean, what a great experience for the young people to see full circle what happens. Of course, they're planting it, but they're harvesting and taking it to market. And then being able to go and buy a goat and take it to give to a family that needs it, and pass out blankets, pass out food, learn from a potter how he makes things. So there's all kinds of things that people of all ages can do. And the point is for the young people to feel a part of it and to come away with things that they would not have normally been able to see or do. So I love the family projects. And
isn't it interesting though? Because I think for family projects, we do have such intentionality in focusing on the kids about, we want them to have a cultural experience. We want them to, because I know, you usually try to teach them about the culture. You try to have a variety of activities so they don't get bored. And I mean, when I'm listening to you guys talk, I'm thinking, adults could use that too. And so we could put that intention, we could have that variety of experiences, but then who's going to build the church, right?
Well, this last summer, I led a group of families that were mostly from my area, friends, family of friends, and on a family project. And I encountered that issue where it's like the adults are like, I want to do all of this stuff. And you're like, well, we have a church we have to build. Yeah. So I ended up doing sort of a cheat day situation where every adult got to have a cheat day and they got to pick an activity, one of the cultural activities, and then join the kids on that day for that activity. So it kind of was a good balance between also exposing them to the culture and all of that, but then also accomplishing the work that we need to get done.
Because I think when we're thinking about children and we think about their malleable minds and this experience for them, we do, ultimately, I think what we're thinking is we want them to not only have a good spiritual experience, but to have an experience that makes them better global citizens of the world. And so we're exposing them to so much, but I think adults could use that too. Everybody could use that. So I know that when we did our mission, I have zero credibility because I only did one, but I remember thinking, I want these kids to know about the Dominican Republic. And so, but we did make it part of the larger group meetings to be talking about, this is their flag. This is, some information about the country. This is about their culture. But then the kids get to do more of a deep dive, like learning how to cook some food and learning to go to all these places. So.
Yeah, I think it is really important to have the adults get that time as well. I was going to say that I think in some ways the youth and their energy fuels the adults. We had some youth when we said, okay, we realized that we had worked them very hard for 2 days and they were needing some time to just interact with the students and kind of fill themselves up. We actually had one of the local students standing there watching all of us laying brick, and one of the parents walked by and said hello, and he says, do you always make them work? He's like, do they ever get to play? And this all came about after the second day, and we're like, okay. So we decided to break early and let the kids go and said, go play soccer. And it was interesting because some of them refused to leave until the work for that day was done. But in regards to the adults specifically, at the end of the week, my husband rotates them out to go to VBS and spend time there, and lets as many off early as possible so they can go out and interact and just sit on the lawn and watch what's going on and talk to the kids as well.
That's important.
It is very important.
So did that young person go and play?
I'm sure they did. I didn't have the conversation, but yeah.
And there's a lot of preparation. You know, you got to find lodging and transportation and figure out food. But there's also other preparation that happens. How do you prepare spiritually when it comes to taking on that responsibility of leading a trip?
I would, for myself, actually, I feel like this is a very grounding experience. When you are put under the fire, you don't have a choice but to get on your knees. I would say these are the biggest growth periods that I go through in the months prior to departure. And the first trip that we went on, I was awake at 2 a.m. so many nights, just on the floor, almost in tears, many times in tears. What did I get myself into? Feeling very overwhelmed. And so through these 4 different trips, I have just learned that I have to rely on God. I am not capable. I am not qualified to be sitting here. It makes me chuckle when you call me a veteran at this because I don't have any training for this, and I have to rely on God to be there. And I'm like a bedtime, get on my knees individual, and this trip in particular has taught, I don't even let my feet hit the floor in the morning. I have to get on my knees, and if I forget, things don't go well that day. And so I think just through the trials, it just, forces you to rely more on God.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot of things that happen on a mission trip for a project coordinator that people probably don't realize. And you talk about that getting down on your knees first thing in the morning. What does a typical day look like when you're leading one of these projects? Can you kind of lay out where does your day begin? Where does it end? Does it end? Some days it feels like it's just going on forever. But what does a typical day look like for you as a project coordinator?
Me?
Erin, do you want to start?
Oh, sure. Also, so generally, we will time breakfast, oftentimes based on the weather. So generally, I would say breakfast is at 6:15 or 6:30, and I very rarely deviate from that, just because by the time you do a breakfast and you have your worship time with the group and your announcements and get to the job site, it's easily 8 to 8:30. There are times, however, if it's really, really hot, that people just want to have their breakfast, get out to the job site, do worship at the job site. We did that in the Dominican Republic, and it worked. It actually worked really well, but it gets you there before it's really, really hot. But in general, breakfast, worship, get out to the job site, morning, a lot of work gets done in the morning, I feel like. And then lunch is oftentimes at the job site. And then you quit, I don't know, maybe around 4:00, get back, get a shower. I love to see what people do with that time period when they get back from the job site, have their showers, and it's downtime, before dinner. And sometimes, we've got people that go out birding. We have young people that sit down and play cards. We have people that take a nap. We have, you name it. It's whatever people want to do with that little bit of time that they have. Then supper. And then oftentimes the end of the day is a debrief and a worship. A lot of gratitude to God for what's happened for the day. Safety for one, that's always a big one. But if there's a lot of outreach going on throughout the day, like maybe it's Vacation Bible School, like what they had, or medical clinic or something like that, it's then the evening is the time when people can talk about what happened during the day. And it's really fun to hear the different things that have happened, in the different areas. So I always enjoy that.
Yeah, and oftentimes as a project coordinator, you're not able to be at all those places.
But say, that's not your day. That's the volunteer
so what do you find yourself doing? They're like, oh, are they just sitting back at the hotel waiting for us to come back? What do you find yourself doing during the day? Those things that you have to stay ahead of to keep the project on track. Like, what are some of those behind the scenes things that you're doing every day?
Well, generally, you're having to think ahead. So for instance, 3 or 4 days before the excursion happens at the end, usually at the end, you're planning that piece. If there's anything that, has to do with food for the cook, you're having to take care of that. So usually you're one step ahead. I also, honestly, we have the most amazing field staff in the country that really help to get a lot of that plan before we get there, to the point that, I maybe have to spend a morning at the hotel working on details, but then I can sometimes get out to the job site, which I really like being able to go out. For years, I wasn't able to do any of that because we didn't have necessarily the team in place to be able to get things ready. But our teams have things so dialed in that as a coordinator, I really do like to get out to the different areas, whether it's the construction or medical, whatever. I enjoy that. So
yeah, I don't know. Like, I went and I had been working for Maranatha for a while, and then that whole experience of leading that one project gave me so much respect for project coordinators, because I felt like I was up first and I was in bed last. And I co-led with my husband, and we never saw our kids because unfortunately we had a friend who's like an auntie to them that made sure they got up, got to the children's program, got to bed on time. But I felt like we were problem solving all the time. And I don't know if you've had that experience, but it just, somebody forgot their meds, so we got to go to the pharmacy in the city and pick that up. We got to go to, someone's toilet's flowing. Why is that person late? We got to find him in the, dorm and get him to the bus. And we're running out of food. This person doesn't like this. And it just felt constant. And then you're also dealing with personalities, and then you're planning ahead. Like you said, you're making sure that the day's programming is, the worship's going to be on, you have the right announcements, the excursion's going to go. And so for us, it just felt like a whirlwind of activities. And I don't know if it was because we were kind of thrown in 2 months before, or if that's normal. What do you guys, Christina?
I think it's normal.
Yeah, I think part of it is normal, but I think part of it is when you're designing a trip from the beginning and you're in part of the process of like making some of the decisions that set up the project, I think it's a little bit easier because you have more of a picture going into it. But part of it's just like, if somebody's sick, you have to handle that. If there's a problem that has to be solved, you have to deal with that. Doesn't matter what time it happens.
It was things like I felt like we couldn't plan for, but just things that happened. We had maybe almost 100 people. It was a big project, so maybe that's why too.
Yes.
So I don't know. Is your day? I don't know. I saw you nodding, but I don't know.
Like, can you think of a particular challenge that maybe volunteers don't think about, like a detail that they don't think about, but it's something that you have to handle?
I think my primary focus is safety before going, and having it be a youth group. And this time we had 6, but we've had more students that go without a parent. And so I'm always thinking, I cannot come home without a child. How do we not lose passports? How do we make sure the whole group's at the gate before we take off? And so laying a lot of that out ahead of time. I spend months just preparing and organizing that, lists and whatnot. So looking at safety, we make family groups that stick together. I do a lot of counting. every time we get
Yes.
on a bus. Okay,
Yes.
counting again, and assigning students to particular adults and as your family group all together. And then I think what you had said about staying a step ahead, and that's where my mind always is what's the next thing, and making sure that you're always thinking, okay, we have to communicate, where does the team need to be next? What's the expectation next? And I agree, especially at the beginning, you felt like you had to be in multiple places at one time, just kind of putting out fires. And something that this last trip is the first time that I was able to go and actually just mostly work on the project site. And that was a very new and fun experience for me. I think something that contributed is when we were on the campus, staying on the campus, working on the campus, eating on the campus. And so that made that easier.
For sure.
And then I think, learned more, and with my husband, to delegate. And so knowing the positions that you can have filled by certain leaders that then take that responsibility off of you. So I had put myself into way too many leadership roles on the first trip and just never could settle. And so being able to say, can you oversee this and this and this and this and this, and then I can watch over that. But that allowed me so much freedom to experience and then just work directly with Alice on different things that we needed to do and not be as frantic.
Alice being our
Yes.
volunteer support coordinator.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you
Alice
guys,
is
I know,
awesome.
how do you deal with people, personalities, without giving specific stories? But I mean, is that maybe the group project is different because you know each other, but Karen and Christina, you've had to deal with open
hard,
teams
yeah.
where it's everybody's strangers coming together. Does that happen a lot, or is it just, you're
I would
throwing a group of
say-
strangers into like a tough situation?
I would say in general, it has been so smooth over the years. You know, there are times when, as coordinators, we look at a list, we look at people's ages, maybe backgrounds, and say, okay, I think maybe they'd be okay roommates. Well, you don't know them. You don't have any idea whether that works, And so we also have to be flexible on that, because sometimes it just isn't a good fit, and that's okay. So that flexibility is actually super important. But I would say in general, we have very little issues of drama, those kinds of dynamics that happen on the trip. I just wanted to mention, back to your spiritual question, that we can do as much planning as we want. And there's always something that goes different, than how we planned it. And that is where I'm always really grateful to see God working. And as a coordinator, you know what has been planned, and you know what is maybe happening that wasn't planned, whereas maybe the volunteers don't. So I have felt like, especially the last several years, that it's important to point those things out to people. Otherwise, they will not necessarily see the ways in which God can work. It could be a personality issue, but normally it's a logistical issue, And, we had that happen in India. There was no way we could have planned this last Christmas what happened to us when we had to stop for a few hours, to make sure that everything was okay with the local officials. And we literally had people praying. We prayed as a group, and individuals were praying. But then what happened as a result of that, people came forward who knew how to help solve this. And that was a huge answer to prayer. So I love seeing those things happen.
Yeah, and I think whenever you're dealing with any sort of conflict like that, making sure that giving people grace. You're pushing people outside of their comfort zone. They're uncomfortable. They're sometimes tired. Maybe they're a little cranky, and sometimes realizing that and just saying, hey, can we give each other grace? And, can we pray over this situation and realize I think we all have the best intentions. Maybe we're not communicating those, in a way that makes it seem that, but just taking a minute and giving everybody grace and saying, hey, how can we work this out? And I think we all want the same thing. We all want to have a good experience. We all want to do good. And so starting from there, how do we resolve this? And I think most times you can resolve things.
I think there's definitely an advantage for me having everybody being able to bring them together before you leave.
Yeah.
And being able to set up expectations and of the schedule and that we expect everybody to be together in all the activities, not breaking off and doing their own thing. Yeah. And having them be prepared that, yes, no matter how much we prepare and think it's going to be exactly this way and there will be this many beds in this room or whatever, things are not going to be the way we expect them to be. And to be able to adapt to that and see the blessings in that, I think that's a huge skill that you can gift to the youth especially, and the adults. Sometimes the adults are less flexible than the youth, but to gift to them to see how God can work and how his plan, his way is not our way, but it's better and it's okay. And so, yeah, I focused a lot on my spiritual growth and journey but the spiritual growth that you see in the team when you're there with your boots on the ground is just beautiful.
It is. We're going to shift gears for a couple minutes and do a few rapid fire questions. So I'm going to ask you a question and then you give me your best answer. Sunrise or sunset on a mission trip? What do you like viewing the best there? Do you prefer to get up early and catch that sunrise or be out and catch a sunset?
Sunset.
Sunset.
No early risers here, huh? What about you?
Actually, it was sunrise this time, I think, just because of the time. But yeah, we had a lot of people up at 4 a.m. walking and doing their devotional time. And it was actually a very peaceful way to start the morning before you got into the project.
Great answer. As a leader, what is one thing that you just can't live without when you're leading a project? And we're not going to say cell phone because you can access a lot of things on your cell phone. But is there another tool that's in your tool belt that you say, oh, I have got to have this when I'm leading a trip?
Gatorade.
That's a good one.
We pack cans of powdered Gatorade, and it is...
Got to keep people hydrated. You don't need them dropping like flies.
For years, for me, it was charcoal. I haven't needed that so much, but for a long time it was charcoal and it was really valuable.
I had a binder that I had used to plan everything and tabs with volunteer names, phone numbers, envelopes, and I just carried that with me everywhere.
Similar to Julia, a binder, and then just lots of lists with all the volunteers' names. Like you're always on the bus, like, is everybody here? I need a list of all the volunteers, and I print out tons of those. And then I can hand them out to people. This is the group of people that you're responsible for. Make sure you have them. So I think volunteer lists for me are really, really crucial.
So lately, it's been a computer and a printer.
Yeah.
Depending on the size of the group.
Yeah.
But honestly, I can hardly do without it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then what's the best excursion that you've been able to go with a group?
Masai Mara for me, I think.
That's pretty epic.
But I didn't lead that one. It was just a great excursion.
Masai Mara. Yeah.
Yes, that and the elephant ride was pretty spectacular in India. We all got to ride elephants for an early morning. That was
never
really
done that.
Phenomenal.
Very cool.
I think for me, part of the reason why the Masai Mara is so awesome, and I know these are rapid fire, sorry, is just to see the look on people's faces when they get to see all the cats.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just incredible.
Who gets to do that?
I know. It's incredible.
Okay, last one. Most popular meal among volunteers. If you've been on a trip and there's a meal that everybody's like, oh, I would have that again.
I don't know. Pizza? Everybody likes a pizza.
Oh, yeah.
We have been so blessed. I have to say, like you asked, what's the one thing that you have to have in your pocket? The boots on the ground in country Maranatha staff.
That's an awesome answer.
Okay. Yep. But we have been so blessed. We had the cooking staff there, and there were 4 of them feeding us, and the main chef had been with Maranatha for 26 years, if I'm remembering correctly. So one meal, we were so blessed with the food.
I think anybody that listens to this podcast on a regular basis will discover that we have an affinity for Indian food. Yes. Because when we're asked, what's your best meal? It's generally Indian. So
yeah.
we're
Also,
really
we just
lucky.
love food.
Yeah, we
We love eating.
When it comes to the mission of Maranatha, there is more than one way to get involved. You can jump right in with both feet by going on a mission trip. You can organize your own with Maranatha's help, or join a project that we've already organized. There are no limitations, and anyone can serve. You can choose to give by making a donation to parts of the mission that inspire you most. From projects in specific countries to programs like Water, the $10 Church, or the One Day Church, every dollar you give goes where you want to help. As a self-supporting organization, Maranatha's work relies on the generosity of all our donors to operate. Keep up to date with all the good that is taking place around the world by subscribing to our emails and our magazine, or watch Maranatha Mission Stories, our weekly television program, and any of the hundreds of videos on our website and Maranatha Channel app. Follow us day to day on our social media accounts and watch short videos or browse photos straight from the mission field. Most importantly, you can pray. Pray for the safe travel of our team around the world, the volunteers, the donors who give so fully to those in need. Pray for wisdom as we aim to transform lives in the field and right here at home. And pray for faith, love, and support for this work, this mission, for Maranatha. Jesus, come soon.
Okay, well, that wraps up our rapid fire questions. And I'd like to kind of shift as we kind of wind up here. You know, throughout the course of a mission trip, you're tracking the progress of the building. Is that getting done? You know, you're doing VBS, but you're also looking at the progress in the lives of the volunteers. So I want to talk a little bit about impact and what are you seeing? Like, what kinds of things are you kind of watching out for in the volunteers to kind of see how are they doing? Are they taking things in? What's making an impact in their lives? What are kind of tangible things or things that you can see that are happening?
I think on this one in particular, being aware of those who might be getting tired and or even discouraged, and being able to just sit down and have a conversation with them and encourage them and help them to see the blessing in the situation. As far as watching, like, what are the overall results, I think some of that happens when we get home and the impact of the whole trip settles in. We've had baptisms as a result of our trips.
Do you see a difference between, you know, you have some first-time volunteers and then veteran volunteers? Do you see a difference in kind of the impact of that first-time volunteer when everything's new to them and how they take things in? Is that evident?
I think it's evident. And usually I'm trying to really be aware of who those first timers are, because they may have been on other projects with other people and I may not know them. But if they are a first timer, I'm just trying to watch, number one, how are they integrating with the group? Is the fellowship happening, you know, within the group? Because oftentimes if it does, then someone is helping them along to have that good experience. And if that isn't happening, then trying to, you know, to orchestrate making that happen. I don't have to do that very often, because I find that in the worship experience, as we are communicating about the day, it brings people in. We try very hard to make sure it's a very that there's a lot of communication happening, so that everybody is feeling like they're somehow involved in that. But the fellowship and how the group interacts with one another is really a big piece of how the experience ultimately culminates, you know? But also, to me, it's also really important the outside, like, for instance, you were at a school and we were also at a school and we had to stay away for a day or two. And when we came back to the school, and this last Christmas, just being able to interact with the faculty, because the kids were already gone for Christmas, but being able to just full circle, be able to have that time together with the faculty, it really did help it to all come back together again. If you have been on a project, you know that there are sort of these ebbs and flows that happen. And a lot of times they'll happen over a period of time. But I think that it's just the time period, if it's too short, like if you only have 7 days versus 9 days on a project, you actually sometimes have to help speed those things along so that they get that wrap up that they need. And that is sometimes an issue at Christmas time if you're trying to fit it within a Christmas break. And that's probably the biggest challenge I've had with trying to make sure that the experience was there full circle. So
I think the evening debriefings are really important to discuss what did you see that day. Our youth pastor makes sure we talk about, where did we see God? What was one of your biggest struggles today? And what do you want to remember? And it just triggers conversation where people can ask questions. They can be encouraged by each other's stories. And I saw a lot of return adults, especially, reaching out and embracing those that were first timers. And that was beautiful to see that mentorship.
And how are you impacted as a leader, kind of seeing that transformation happen through the volunteers? How are you kind of like a secondhand effect on you, but how does that impact you? Maybe because you know a backstory on a student that's going and something that they're struggling with, or a home situation, and then you see something that's happening, or things like that. How does knowing that information impact you as a leader?
Well, it makes all the work worthwhile for sure. And generally those kind of stories stay with me forever. And I have oftentimes used those in an example, but when other people are impacted, it truly stays with me forever. I'm just grateful, number one, that people are willing to be vulnerable because their vulnerability helps other people realize that they're not alone in their thinking. And so I don't know, I've just been thankful that people were willing to be open about their experience.
Yeah, I don't have it, as somebody who goes on projects to interview and to do media, I'm an observer, a lot of observer, and I get I talk to the leadership to find out what different volunteers might be going through, what their backstory might be. And I think the thing that's really neat is everybody is rooting for those people that we know come with something, a hole that they need to fill in terms of their broken heart or anything that they've been through. And I know, I just was most recently, the volunteer project was Ultimate Workout, and you learn about these kids and you're watching them, and there are these young people starting to, and you can see that something's starting to click for them as you observe them in worship or in their interaction with other people. And I think the beautiful thing is the adults or the leadership all get together and say, did you see what they said? Did you hear what they said? Or did you see that they're interacting now? Did you see that they're doing this? And everybody's just rooting for each other to have this transformational experience. And I think that's really cool. And I imagine that's probably how leadership feels, that we're so in support of each other.
Yeah. It makes all the hours put in worth it. And I think just makes me so grateful to God for what he can do with our hands if we just have willing hearts.
So as we wrap up here, how do you define that a trip has been successful? How do you say, oh, okay, this was, I don't think that yes, you complete a church or you complete a school, but when it comes to the impact in people's lives, what sort of things do you say, okay, I saw that this was successful, I saw transformation? I think you talked a little bit about things that happen maybe once you come home. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you see in the students there?
Coming home, and just yesterday we had parent-teacher conferences. So I was talking to our 7th and 8th grade teacher and hearing him share what the students came home and the stories that they shared with their classmates and just the positive experience they had. That is really what reinforces that the trip was successful. Yeah. And then, like I had said, we've had parents come home. The youth have actually brought their parents. They're the reason, and led their parents to the trip, partly because the parents weren't willing to let the children go on their own. But when you get home, seeing those parents desiring Bible studies and then being led to baptism through their children.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that is awesome.
Well, thank you, ladies, for taking this time to talk about the ins and outs of mission leadership and how it impacts not just the volunteers, but us also as leaders. So thank you for taking the time to do that. And thank you for listening to this peek inside missions. You can learn more about the work of Maranatha Volunteers International at maranatha.org. We'd love for you to get involved, make a donation, or see you on a mission trip, maybe with one of us as a leader on a trip. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Christina usually does stuff on my hair because I have a lot of flyaways.
Speaking of that, are there any flyaways?
No, you look good.
Because you're a grown up and you actually wear product and I don't. That's why I have flyaways.